Paul from the UK. Ooh, I'm gonna have 2 UK accents to listen to. Woohoo! Paul, can you hear us?
Yep.
All right. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm doing all right.
Excellent.
Dare I ask which part of the UK you're from?
England.
Okay, that narrows it down. Go ahead. How can we help you?
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about. So I've called up before, and I talked about some sort of cosmological argument, and I kind of realized that both of the premises of pretty much all of the versions of the kalam kind of rely on like infinities not being possible, whether it's an actual infinity or infinity by successive addition. So I wanted to talk to you guys about whether it's possible for time to be infinite, maybe provide some reasons why I don't personally think that can be the case.
Here's a question. Before we bounce into that, Paul, is the kalam like the most convincing argument to you?
No. It's up there, but I think there's still other arguments that could probably do better.
Okay, then why are we talking about whether or not time is infinite to support or disprove the kalam? If I mean, I'm not saying this is a pointless topic, but what I am saying is, if you've got better arguments and we have to go into all this wishy-washy, timey-wimey bullshit to parse out whether or not the kalam is even a valid argument, then let's go straight for the arguments that are a little bit more hard-hitting. Like, I don't know. I've always felt like if you have to go this far out of your way to argue, and the kalam doesn't even get you to like any specific god even, so it's kind of meh. Yeah. as far as arguments for God go.
It's just supposed to be an argument for basically in support of theism, so it wouldn't necessarily prove Allah or Yahweh. It's not really what it's for specifically.
Yeah, and I understand that. I guess that that's one of the reasons that it's a pretty meh argument to me, is that even if I granted you literally the entire argument, which I don't, but even if I did, even if we skipped right to the end and said, sure, all of that is true, now what?
Well, then you would have a sort of transcendent cause, which is the conclusion of one of the versions, probably one of the stronger versions of the kalam.
Okay, if the kalam is true, then there is possibly a deistic god that started everything off, first cause, blah, blah, blah. So I don't know if you're watching the screen, but
we can describe this god also.
I think the issue you have, Paul, first of all, you've called on a week where the two hosts aren't really that bothered with philosophy, and you clearly are.
Yeah.
That's the main issue, the main elephant in the room. And the second thing is, you've also called on a week where the Talk Heathen is being hosted by 2 ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. And when people say religion to an ex-Jehovah's Witness, or specifically to us, it means a lot more. There are far more specific permutations than simply, oh, did the universe have an intelligent beginning? Is there a celestial intelligence behind the beginning of all things? It's far more specific than that for myself and Rudy. So we're not as interested in the journey, which I think is what you were saying, Rudy. We're more interested in where's the end product? Where is this going? What specifically do we need to do with our lives in light of any potential discovery that the universe has an intelligent beginning?
Right, because I have absolutely no investment in fighting the idea of a deistic God. I have absolutely no investment in that. If somebody could prove it to me, I'd be like, okay, like that's all right. Like, you got to get more into the specifics.
Yeah, we could just go with a specific religion, perhaps Christianity, given your
What's your religion? I don't want to talk about somebody who's not in the room.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Any particular flavor of Christianity?
I'm non-denominational, so I don't really kind of look at that stuff.
Okay, so what is your concept of God then? I mean, I know that, non-denominational is pretty vague. I just want to get into, where we're going here.
Basically, maybe we could talk about evidence for the resurrection. It wasn't really what I planned to do, but I suppose I could just wing that.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to throw off your whole reason for. It's just that, like Lloyd said, neither of us are super invested in philosophy, and in this argument in particular, it's like, I'm not super. I don't really give a shit either way if time could or could not be infinite. That's so.
Yeah.
I'm way more interested in getting into
Which
what
is not to
your
say that you
idea
can't be interested in all that. It's just that you've hardly
You've
looked
unfortunately
out.
gotten the two people who are not at all interested in that.
Yeah.
Call when J Mike is on. Call when J Mike is hosting, and you will have a wonderful philosophical discussion. But yeah, so you are a non-denominational Christian, and you believe that there's good evidence for the resurrection. That's a good place to start. Let's go from there.
Well, to be honest, the first thing I'd like to say is that considering how long ago this happened, I doubt anyone will ever be able to prove specifically that Christ was resurrected, or even that to have definitive proof that he even died on the cross in the first place. I mean, obviously
that's fair. That is a very, very specific event that happened supposedly to one person, like evidence of one specific person's death, and that person was not a king of some sort. It is pretty unlikely you're going to find hard archaeological evidence. That is fair. I will totally grant that.
Yeah. So I think that maybe one piece of evidence maybe that there was a resurrection was maybe the sightings of Jesus after his death, the empty tomb, maybe. It seems that these are two inductive pieces of evidence that we could posit to say maybe there was actually a resurrection.
Okay, well, where are you getting that information from? That there were sightings of Jesus after the fact, and that there was an empty tomb?
Well, some of the ancient Roman writers, I mean, for example, you have like Josephus, there's Flavius Tacitus, who I think they wrote about Jesus like within, I think Josephus was within 60 years of his death as well.
My understanding, and I could very easily be wrong, is that, I mean, like anybody who writes about Christianity will be writing about Jesus. That doesn't mean that they actually thought that Jesus was a real person, or that he was the Son of God, or that they are confirming specific rumors about what he did or did not do in life.
Yeah, well, to my knowledge, I believe that I think it was one of the two writers that I just mentioned, either Josephus or maybe Tacitus, that was referring to Jesus as that was the Jew that we just killed, and now everyone's saying that he's the Son of God, but he died, and basically they're talking about him in a very derogatory way, which would suggest that they aren't very biased towards him being the actual Messiah, and if anything, they would show a more negative viewpoint of him, which, in my opinion, and I think historically would make it more likely that what they were saying was accurate.
Right, but if that's all true, then all that says is that they put a guy named Jesus to death, and he had a lot of followers.
Yeah, but they're also okay. How do I put this? Because usually there are like three pieces of evidence. Usually it's the empty tomb, it's the writings of him, and the supposed rumors of his resurrection, and the sightings of his resurrection. To my knowledge, those are the only pieces of evidence that I know. I know it's a very shaky position to stand on alone, because obviously, you're essentially devoting your life to something, and if you're looking purely at the historical evidence, there's not really that much, but it is a lot, considering if you were to check out any other random person who was crucified and died, thousands of years ago, you would find essentially nothing at all. So,
well, this person had a legend around them. Whether or not that legend is true is obviously still up for debate. But if Jesus was a famous person, like if Jesus was real and was a famous person and did some preaching and got a lot of followers, it's not. I mean, a whole religion sprouted up around this guy. It's not surprising that there would be people talking about it. I don't think that that's particularly. I mean, there are much more obscure figures in history who we can find random documents and tablets that talk a little bit about what they were up to, and they're not as significant as Jesus because Jesus started a religion. But I mean, I guess that my question is like you're right. This is pretty shaky ground to stand on alone, and I get that there is somewhat of a cumulative argument, but I don't. The problem is none of this all of this evidence could point to Jesus being a real, actual person, and there really was a religion that started up around him. What I'm not seeing from any of this evidence is evidence that he was raised from the dead, and even further, I'm not seeing any evidence that him being raised from the dead had anything to do with him being the Son of God. Even if you could prove that, that doesn't explain the origins of that.
Actually,
what'd you say? Sorry.
Many people say that. Many people say that that because Lazarus was also raised from the dead, then surely you can say maybe Lazarus was like also a Messiah, because surely using something as arbitrary as rumors of a person's resurrection doesn't mean that they were a Messiah. But you have to look at the context that this person essentially says that I'm the Son of God, blah blah blah, and I am this special person, and there are like hints, drops, and all over the place. And so when he dies and he resurrects, you have to realize that at this point, Christianity barely has existed for even 10 years, if at all. The Bible wasn't even in existence. Like the writings wouldn't be put together for ages after that. So it isn't like you can exactly rule out biblical recordings of him. And also the fact that
I would stop you right there, because I think that you can pretty easily rule out biblical recordings as far as how much research have you done into the origins of the four gospels?
I've done enough to know that they are somewhat dubious, especially Matthew, I think, and there are a few others. I basically skimmed over, and I know that there is debate as to who authored the four gospels, but regardless, it has even if you look at it from the worst point of view and say that all four of the gospels, which I don't think many people say, people just say some of them, but all four of the gospels are faked, or maybe have a different author from what's actually claimed. It still shares facts and evidence with the things that were already known about, and it shares facts.
Hold on a sec, because none of the books of the gospel claim to be written by the people who they are named after. That was ascribed much later by the church. I mean, it wasn't if you read those books, they don't claim to be written by the people whose names are put on them. So that in and of itself is...
And accounts from those people.
Sorry, could you repeat that?
I said it was supposed to be an account from those people. It's the gospel according to Mark or Matthew.
But
that's the name they were given later.
They weren't written by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Those were assigned names. None of the actual gospels purport to be written by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And furthermore, they were written decades after the events purportedly happened by followers of Jesus, whose names we don't know. So that's probably an area in which finding out more about Bible scholarship might help you.
Speaking of which, Paul, I'm really enjoying this conversation. We do have some other callers we have to get to, but if I could make a recommendation, I would love for you to pit these arguments that you have and these ideas that you have against another Paul that I know. There is a YouTube channel called Paulogia. It's like apologia, like apologetics, but his name is also Paul. So you can guess how that's spelled. And he is really, really great at breaking down the historical stuff, and he's responded to a lot of Christian apologists, and he has made his own videos on these topics. That is like the number one person coming to my head who I would love for you to check out some of his videos, and then maybe sort of call back, and maybe if you have like a very specific, like, okay, I disagree about this or about that, or I don't know. But I would love for you to check out his videos.
Yeah, I'll definitely give it a watch.
Yeah, I think that with the conversation we've had so far, if that's the kind of stuff that you find interesting, you would love those videos. They are really good.
Yeah, okay.
All right. Well, thank you for calling. We're going to get some other callers on, but this was a really good conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah, thanks.